Strategies of deterrence of adversaries and assurance of allies, particularly strategies that involve nuclear deterrence and nuclear assurance, continue to be central to the practice of international politics and international security today. We see it in Europe between NATO and Russia. We see it in Northeast Asia between the United States and Japan and South Korea and North Korea. We've convened this annual conference since 2009. The programs and the reports from previous meetings are available on our website. And if you look at them, you can track the evolution of concerns and key questions and key themes in deterrence and assurance that have taken place. So this year's meeting convened to assess whether deterrence strategies and assurance strategies are at an inflection point, which is to say a point at which changes in the global security environment means that the practice of deterrence and assurance needs to be fundamentally rethought.
So the most important priority is cohesion. In 2012, NATO conducted a review of its deterrence and defense posture, which emphasized the value of conventional capabilities and improved nuclear capabilities. Since then, since the invasion of and annexation of Crimea, it's added cyber capabilities to the toolkit, improved strike capabilities, and the question now is how do you put all of these different pieces together in a coherent whole so that the whole is more than the sum of the parts. Cohesion is the objective today.
So the first priority for deterrence really needs to be assurance, actually. So much of the West's deterrence strategy relies on cohesion among the NATO allies, in particular, and a shared vision. And the alliance is really at a difficult point at the moment because of a variety of factors. You have increased information operations coming from Russia and a lot of pressure in that direction. But for a lot of these countries, there's also a lot of pressure coming from the nuclear weapons ban movement, and you are seeing a lot more civic engagement and the public's putting pressure on their governments. But then you also have a bit of waning U.S. credibility in Europe at the moment as well. And so you're seeing these divisions emerge within NATO, which really does have the potential to undermine deterrence and other strategic priorities. So for the United States in particular, assurance really needs to be at the top of the agenda, and that can include just reaching out to and engaging with allies, getting on the plane and going over there, and acknowledging the different pressures that they're under, but restating and re-emphasizing the need for Western cohesion around deterrence priorities and strategy.
I think because Europeans cannot be sure that the United States in a crisis would really take care of their security concerns, I think it's important for the Transatlantic Alliance to strengthen the European pillar of transatlantic deterrence. And I think that's important in order to show opponents that the Transatlantic Alliance as such will be able to act in case of a crisis.
So I actually don't think that the first priority should be strategy so much as getting the political environment right. It's not about capability, it's not about trying to review or update concepts so much as maintaining unity among the alliance and making sure that we're on the same page as to the specific challenges that we want to face and how to face them.
I think what is important, really important, is to have a clear idea what we want to deter. So the attainable, realistic goal of what we want to deter. I think that's really important because we tend to want to deter everything, but it's just impossible. And also, related to that, I think, is that we need to be very. We need to think about what other countries perceive. So the Beijing and Pyongyang are watching what you're doing. So this perception, I think, the strategic message, what sort of message we can deliver, I think that's also really important.
Well, I think the top priority for Western deterrence strategy is to wrestle with what is perhaps one of our bigger conundrums, and that is to determine whether or not we need to consider the North Korean nuclear problem principally through a lens of deterrence rather than through a lens of denuclearization. What does that mean? It means that we have to actually not just think about that and assume we can have both, but to recognize the really difficult trade-offs that are involved in terms of our policies towards reunification, our policies towards non-proliferation, and I don't think we've wrestled our way through that problem yet.
The main challenge for the West is understanding better the potential opponents, be them Russia, North Korea, or anybody else. Understanding what makes them tick, what kind of actions by our side and what kind of non-action by our side would actually invite more assertive actions for them.
We need to develop and communicate a clear, honest, but reassuring explanation of why deterrence remains an unavoidable predicament and necessity for Western liberal states. And that explanation needs to point out the scale of the collective action problem represented by security threats and in particular nuclear weapons. The fact that it's much more complicated than simply a problem in physics. It has to do with basic psychology and politics and in many ways human identity. And that there is no magic escape. If we all hold hands and sign a nuclear ban treaty, that isn't going to solve the problem. The only way forward is actually, in contrast, slow, painful, trust-building, verified treaties, reductions over time.
I would say that the first priority for a Western deterrence strategy, which means for the US, for the UK, and for France, is not to be weakened, is not to be perceived as weakened or in a process of weakening, whatever the pressure exerted by ideology on what nuclear deterrence means. So this is not only a priority, but I would say that for us, it's a duty, thanks to the idea that we have of international security, international stability, and the prospect of peaceful relations between states.